On the endless plains of North America, three names once shook a continent: Sitting Bull, Crazy Horse, and Red Cloud. They were more than leaders. They were visions, fire, and strategy united in human form. To their people, they were guardians of land and spirit. To their enemies, they were shadows of fear and resistance. Their stories echo through rivers, mountains, and the winds of the plains. This is not just a tale of battles. It is a story of prophecy, courage, and diplomacy. A story of how nations fought to protect their way of life against overwhelming odds. The 19th century brought storms. As settlers spread westward, native lands shrank. The buffalo, lifeline of the plains, were slaughtered by millions. Hunger and despair followed. Amid this darkness rose three figures, each different yet bound by the same cause. Sitting Bull, the visionary; Crazy Horse, the fearless warrior; Red Cloud, the strategist. Together, they embodied the fight of native nations, not just to survive, but to remain free. Their names became legends whispered across the frontier. To understand their story, we must begin with Sitting Bull, a man who claimed he could see the future. But his visions were not dreams. They were battles written in the wind, and one of them would predict a victory that stunned the world. Sitting Bull was born in 1831 near the Grand River in present-day South Dakota. From childhood, he showed quiet strength and a deep connection to the world around him. His Lakota name, Tatanka Ayotake, meant buffalo bull who sits down. As a boy, he learned to ride, to hunt, and to listen to the songs of the wind across the plains. The buffalo were not just animals, they were life itself, the heartbeat of his people. At age 14, he counted his first coup, striking an enemy warrior with a mere stick before retreating unharmed. Among the Lakota, this was the mark of bravery, greater even than killing. But Sitting Bull's power was never only in the lands. From youth, he was drawn to the spiritual world. He fasted, prayed, and sought visions on lonely hilltops. Lakota elders saw in him not just courage, but wisdom. They recognized that his spirit carried something more, an ability to see beyond the present into what was yet to come. By adulthood, he had become a respected warrior and a medicine man. His songs and prayers inspired his people. His presence in camp brought reassurance and unity. The Lakota world was changing. White settlers poured into the plains, building roads, railroads, and towns. With them came rifles, alcohol, and disease. Sitting Bull warned his people that these newcomers sought more than trade. They sought the very heart of the Lakota world, the Black Hills, the buffalo, the rivers. In council, he spoke with calm but firm voice. These lands are our children's inheritance. We must protect them, for they are sacred. As a leader, he refused to sign treaties that would sell land to the United States. He declared, "I will not sell my birthplace. I will not sell the bones of my fathers." His defiance gained him respect among the Lakota. He became chief of the Hunkpapa Lakota, chosen not only for courage in battle, but for wisdom in leadership. Sitting Bull taught that the strength of the Lakota lay in unity. He worked to unite not only his people, but also neighboring nations, the Cheyenne, the Arapaho, into one cause. His visions became central to his leadership. In one vision, he saw soldiers falling into camp upside down, their heads buried in the earth. He declared, "This is a promise of victory." His people believed in his visions. They believed the Great Spirit spoke through him. When Sitting Bull prayed, warriors felt courage burn in their hearts. He was not reckless. He counseled patience, wisdom, and unity. But when the time for war came, he promised the spirits would ride with them. By the mid-1870s, tension boiled. Settlers invaded the Black Hills after rumors of gold spread. Miners poured into sacred Lakota lands, breaking treaties again. The Lakota knew the Black Hills as Pahasapa, the heart of everything that is. To lose it would be to lose their very soul. Sitting Bull declared it must never be surrendered. U.S. officials demanded the Lakota move to reservations. Sitting Bull refused. He said, "You are fools to make yourselves slaves to a piece of fat bacon, some hardtack, and a little sugar and coffee." His words inspired defiance. Warriors left reservations to join him. Camps swelled with thousands of families united under his vision. In these councils, Sitting Bull prepared his people for what was coming. He prayed, he fasted, and he told them, "The soldiers will come, and we will defeat them." His faith in the vision was unshakable. Even those who doubted began to believe as the prophecy spread. It was no longer just Sitting Bull's vision. It was the destiny of the people. The camp along the Little Bighorn River grew larger than any seen before. It was a nation gathered as one, awaiting the storm. Sitting Bull had prepared them not only for survival, but for victory. He believed their fight was not just against soldiers, but against forgetting who they were. And when the soldiers finally marched into that valley, Sitting Bull's vision was ready to unfold. Crazy Horse was born around 1840 to the Oglala, Lakota. His childhood name was Tashunke Witko, which means his horse is crazy. Even as a boy, his presence was different, quiet, thoughtful, yet filled with fire. Unlike many others, Crazy Horse was light-skinned with soft hair, earning him the nickname Curly. But behind those gentle features was a warrior's heart that would become legendary. He grew up during times of great tension. Settlers pressed into Lakota lands. The buffalo herds grew thinner. Crazy Horse learned early that survival required courage beyond fear. As a teenager, he gained respect for his bravery. He moved swiftly in battle, his horse darting through chaos, his arrows flying true. His people began to see him as chosen. Crazy Horse lived by visions. A holy man once told him, "Paint your face with lightning, place a feather in your hair, and never tie it." This vision would protect him in war. In battle, he was untamed. He rode directly into gunfire, his movements unpredictable, his courage unshaken. Soldiers often said he appeared like a spirit, impossible to strike. He refused to be photographed. He believed that allowing his image to be captured would weaken his spirit. Unlike many leaders, he left no likeness, only memories in the minds of his people. This decision made him mysterious, almost mythical. To his people, he became a symbol of purity, uncorrupted by fame or the white man's gaze. By the 1860s, Crazy Horse had risen as a war leader among the Oglala. His raids against soldiers and settlers made his name feared along the frontier. But he was not reckless. He fought to protect his people, their hunting grounds, their freedom. Every battle he fought was a stand against the tide that threatened to drown the Lakota world. Crazy Horse's courage reached its peak at the Battle of Little Bighorn in 1876. As Sitting Bull's vision foretold, soldiers came, and Crazy Horse led the charge that shattered them. Warriors remembered him riding with lightning speed, circling Custer's men, cutting through their lines. His fearlessness inspired everyone who fought beside him. When the battle ended, the 7th Cavalry lay destroyed. Crazy Horse's name was forever tied to that victory, the greatest native triumph over US forces. But victory brought greater enemies. The US Army poured reinforcements into the plains, determined to crush resistance once and for all. As hunger and pressure grew, some Lakota leaders chose to surrender. Crazy Horse refused. He continued to fight, even as his allies laid down their weapons. His defiance made him dangerous in the eyes of the US government. To them, Crazy Horse was not just a warrior, he was rebellion itself. In 1877, betrayal struck. Trusted men lured Crazy Horse to Camp Robinson under the promise of peace. But there, he was seized and stabbed in custody. His death shocked the Lakota. He had never been defeated in open battle. Only deceit ended his life. His people wept, for they knew a great spirit had fallen. Yet legends cannot be killed. Crazy Horse's refusal to be photographed made him timeless. His image exists only in the hearts of his people. Today, in South Dakota, the Crazy Horse Memorial rises, a mountain being carved into his likeness, the largest monument in the world, a stone echo of an untamed spirit. But the true Crazy Horse is not in stone. He lives in the stories, in the songs of his people, in the thunder of hooves across the prairie. He was a warrior who never sought fame, never posed for pictures, never signed treaties. He fought only for his people and the land they called sacred. To the Lakota, Crazy Horse remains the embodiment of freedom, untamed, unbroken, eternal. And though his body was laid down in 1877, his spirit still gallops across the plains, reminding us that true warriors never die. Red Cloud was born in 1822 near the Platte River in what is now Nebraska. From his youth, he showed a sharp mind and a strong will. His Lakota name, Mahpialuta, meant Scarlet Cloud. Unlike Crazy Horse, whose strength was fury in battle, Red Cloud's gift was strategy. He was patient, calculating, and always thinking 3 steps ahead. He grew up watching his people fight for survival as settlers moved west. The Oregon Trail and the Bozeman Trail cut through Lakota hunting grounds. Conflict was inevitable. Red Cloud rose as a leader who understood both war and negotiation. He saw that weapons could win battles, but only alliances could win wars. In 1866, US troops built forts along the Bozeman Trail, directly in Lakota lands. To Red Cloud, this was not just trespass, it was invasion. He declared that no soldier would pass through without blood. His words inspired warriors across the Sioux, Cheyenne, and Arapaho to join him. This began what history remembers as Red Cloud's War, the only war the United States ever lost to native nations. Red Cloud's tactics were brilliant. He avoided reckless charges. Instead, he used ambushes, decoys, and knowledge of the land to trap his enemies. The most famous of these was the Fetterman Fight of 1866. 80 US soldiers rode out, and every one of them was killed in Red Cloud's ambush. This stunning victory sent shockwaves across the frontier. The US Army realized Red Cloud was not just a war chief. He was a strategist of the highest order. For 2 years, Red Cloud kept the forts under constant pressure. Supply lines were cut, patrols ambushed, morale broken. By 1868, the US had enough. They sued for peace. Red Cloud, unlike others, refused to come to the table until every last fort was abandoned. And he won. The Treaty of Fort Laramie in 1868 recognized Sioux control over the Powder River country. It was the first and only time the US signed away victory to native nations. For the Lakota, it was a moment of triumph. The land was theirs again. The dream of unity had held strong against an empire. But treaties made by America were rarely honored. Within a decade, gold was discovered in the Black Hills, and the US broke its promises again. Still, Red Cloud's war remained a lesson. Strength could win battles, but vision could win nations. His diplomacy had carved out a rare moment of victory. Unlike Crazy Horse, Red Cloud eventually chose the path of negotiation. He lived to old age, a respected statesman among his people. Some Lakota criticized him for compromise, but even they admitted, without his victories, the Sioux would have lost their lands much sooner. Red Cloud proved that leadership had many faces. Some carried spears, some carried visions, and some carried words that bent empires. He spent his later years reminding his people of who they were, urging them not to forget their language, their songs, and their pride. Though the treaties were broken, Red Cloud's War stands as a rare moment when native nations forced America to retreat. It was proof that unity, discipline, and strategy could defeat even the most powerful army of the age. Red Cloud's legacy is not only in victories or treaties, it is in the idea that native strength couldn't be erased, that strategy was as powerful as the sword. And when he died in 1909, he left behind a lesson carved into history. The scarlet cloud of resistance may fade, but it never disappears. By the mid-1870s, the fragile peace between the Lakota and the United States had shattered. Gold had been discovered in the sacred Black Hills, and with it came an unstoppable flood of miners. The Black Hills, known as Pahasapa, were the heart of Lakota spirituality. To lose them was to lose their very soul. Sitting Bull declared they must never be surrendered. The Treaty of Fort Laramie had promised the land to the Sioux, but promises meant little to Washington once gold was at stake. The treaty was broken, like so many before. The US government demanded all Lakota move to reservations by January 31st, 1876. Those who refused were labeled hostiles. But the Lakota did not see themselves as hostile. They were free, defending the lands promised to them, defending the spirit of their ancestors. Warriors left reservations to join Sitting Bull, Crazy Horse, and their allies. The camps grew larger, swelling with families and fighters alike. The Cheyenne and Arapaho joined them, forging one of the largest native gatherings in history. Unity gave them strength not seen in generations. Sitting Bull held a great sun dance in the summer of 1876. He fasted, pierced his skin, and prayed until visions came. In his vision, he saw soldiers falling into the camp like grasshoppers from the sky. He declared this meant a great victory was near. This prophecy spread through the camp. Warriors felt courage ignite. They believed the Great Spirit had already promised them victory. Crazy Horse prepared his men with relentless discipline. He urged them to ride swift, strike hard, and never give ground. His calm fire inspired all who followed him. Red Cloud, though not present at Little Bighorn, had shown through his war that unity could defeat even the US. His example echoed in every heart. As spring turned to summer, the camp along the Little Bighorn River grew immense. Thousands of people, hundreds of teepees, warriors ready for battle. Scouts watched the plains. They knew the soldiers would come. It was only a matter of time. On June 25, 1876, that time arrived. General George Armstrong Custer and the 7th Cavalry rode into history. The Lakota, Cheyenne, and Arapaho were ready. They had been warned by visions, united by alliances, and strengthened by spirit. Children played in the camps, women prepared meals, unaware that history's bloodiest battle on the plains was about to begin. The soldiers thought they faced only a few hundred. In truth, they faced thousands, a nation united. Custer split his forces, underestimating his enemy. It was a fatal mistake. Crazy Horse waited with warriors ready to strike like lightning. The thunder of hoofs echoed across the valley. Warriors rode out to meet soldiers in a clash of two worlds. For the Lakota, this was not just a battle. It was prophecy fulfilled, a fight for survival, for the future of their children. For the soldiers, it was supposed to be a routine campaign. Instead, it was a march into legend. The river, the hills, the sky all seemed to hold their breath. The Battle of Little Bighorn was about to begin. And when the first shots rang out, prophecy became reality. The morning of June 25, 1876, the Lakota, Cheyenne, and Arapaho camp stretched for miles along the Little Bighorn River. Over 7,000 people lived in the valley that day. General George Armstrong Custer believed he faced only a few hundred warriors. In truth, there were more than 1,500 ready for battle. Custer divided his 7th Cavalry into 3 columns. A fatal mistake. His men rode down the valley, unaware they were marching into prophecy. Sitting Bull did not fight with weapons that day. Instead, he prayed, offering tobacco and songs to the Great Spirit, asking for protection of his people. Crazy Horse was different. He mounted his horse, painted with lightning bolts, and rode to the front. He would lead the charge. As Custer's men advanced, Lakota and Cheyenne warriors surged forward. Arrows, rifles, and spears filled the air. Crazy Horse led a daring maneuver, charging directly into the cavalry's flank. His speed and fury shattered their line. Custer's men fired desperately, but the warriors closed in from all sides. Horses screamed, gunfire roared, dust choked the valley. For every soldier, there seemed to be 10 warriors. The 7th Cavalry realized too late that they were hopelessly outnumbered. Custer himself fought bravely, but his arrogance had doomed him. He had marched straight into the heart of a united nation. Within an hour, the cavalry was broken. Bodies lay across the hills. The prophecy of Sitting Bull had come true. Soldiers falling into camp, destroyed. Warriors remembered Crazy Horse riding through the chaos like a spirit, fearless, unstoppable. His charge became the stuff of legend. The battle raged into the next day as scattered cavalry tried to regroup, but resistance was futile. Entire companies were wiped out. By June 26th, it was over. More than 260 soldiers of the 7th Cavalry lay dead. It was the greatest Native American victory in history. For the Lakota, Cheyenne, and Arapaho, it was more than victory. It was survival. Proof that unity could defeat even the strongest enemy. But victory carried a shadow. The US government wouldn't forgive or forget. The Great Sioux War had only just begun. Custer's defeat shocked America. Newspapers screamed of massacre, and calls for vengeance filled the air. the US Army prepared to strike back. For the Lakota, it was a fleeting triumph. They had won a battle, but they had awakened an empire's wrath. Still, the memory of that day would never fade. It was the moment prophecy, courage, and unity came together as one. Crazy Horse became immortal in that valley. His name would forever be tied to Little Bighorn, the day the cavalry fell. Sitting Bull's vision had come true, proving his role as a prophet. His people saw him as more than a leader. They saw him as chosen. Women and children in the camp remembered the chaos, the thunder of hoofs, the cries of warriors. For them, it was survival in the face of extinction. For the soldiers, it became known as Custer's last stand. For the Lakota, it was the great victory, a sign that the Great Spirit was with them. And though the battle ended, its echoes still thunder across the plains, a reminder that freedom is worth fighting for. The victory at Little Bighorn sent shockwaves across America. In the East, newspapers cried out for vengeance. The US government couldn't accept defeat. Within months, tens of thousands of soldiers were sent west. An empire had awakened, determined to crush the Lakota once and for all. The buffalo, lifeblood of the plains, were slaughtered by the millions. Hunters were paid to leave no herd alive. Hunger began to stalk native camps. Without buffalo, survival became nearly impossible. Children cried with empty stomachs, elders weakened, and families struggled in despair. Sitting Bull led his followers north into Canada, seeking refuge. For a time, they found peace across the border. Crazy Horse chose a different path. He refused to leave, fighting a running war across the plains, striking and vanishing like a storm. His raids kept soldiers fearful, but they couldn't last forever. Ammunition grew scarce, families suffered, and allies began to surrender. By 1877, even the bravest warriors saw resistance fading. The Lakota couldn't fight hunger, cold, and endless armies at the same time. In May 1877, Crazy Horse finally agreed to surrender at Camp Robinson, Nebraska. Thousands gathered to see the great war leader lay down his arms. But the US Army feared him even as a prisoner. His influence was too great, his spirit too wild. They believed he might inspire rebellion again. That September, a trap was set. Crazy Horse was told to come to the guardhouse under the promise of peace. Instead, soldiers waited with chains. When he realized the betrayal, Crazy Horse resisted. In the struggle, a soldier's bayonet pierced his body. The great warrior fell, not in battle but in treachery. He was carried to the adjutant's office, bleeding, refusing medical help. He whispered, "Let me die free." By nightfall, Crazy Horse was gone. His death broke the heart of the Lakota. They had never seen him defeated. Only betrayal could end his story. No photograph, no drawing captured his true face. His spirit remained untamed, existing only in memory and legend. Meanwhile, Sitting Bull stayed in Canada with his people, resisting all offers to return. But food grew scarce even there. Red Cloud, older now, chose diplomacy. He urged peace and survival, knowing the wars couldn't be won forever. The Lakota world was collapsing. Reservation lines closed in, buffalo were gone, and soldiers patrolled every trail. The victory at Little Bighorn had been glorious, but it was also the spark for greater suffering. America's revenge was merciless, yet Crazy Horse's death only strengthened his legend. To his people, he became immortal, a spirit of defiance that no bayonet could kill. Stories of his courage spread across the plains, told in whispers around fires, passed down to children as lessons of freedom. Even in death, he remained dangerous to the government. His name was a rallying cry, his legacy a spark of resistance. For the Lakota, his betrayal was a wound that never healed, but his spirit galloped on, untamed as ever. The plains had lost their greatest warrior, but gained an eternal legend. Crazy Horse lives forever in the heartbeat of the land. Before Little Bighorn, another great struggle had shaken the West. It was known as Red Cloud's War, the only war the United States ever lost to native nations. The Bozeman Trail cut through the heart of Lakota hunting grounds, carrying settlers and soldiers straight into sacred territory. To the Lakota, Cheyenne, and Arapaho, this was not a trail, it was an invasion. Red Cloud swore that no soldier would pass unchallenged. In 1866, U.S. troops built Fort Phil Kearny, Fort Reno, and Fort C.F. Smith along the trail. To Red Cloud, these were trespasses carved in wood and stone. Red Cloud refused every treaty that allowed the forts to remain. He told U.S. officials, "First take away the forts, and then we will talk peace." Instead of negotiations, he chose war. Hundreds of warriors rallied to his cause, determined to defend their lands with bow, rifle, and lance. Red Cloud's genius lay in strategy. He avoided reckless battles. Instead, he cut supply lines, ambushed patrols, and made the forts prisons of fear. The most famous victory came on December 21, 1866. Captain Fetterman led 80 soldiers out of Fort Phil Kearny. They never returned. Decoys lured the soldiers into a trap. Warriors swarmed from all sides. In less than an hour, the entire command was wiped out. The Fetterman fight shocked the U.S. military. For the first time, an entire detachment had been annihilated on the plains. Red Cloud's campaign continued. Patrols were slaughtered, forts starved, settlers abandoned the trail. The U.S. Army had no answers. By 1868, the government had enough. They invited Red Cloud to negotiate. But he refused to come until every fort was abandoned. Finally, the forts were burned and abandoned. Only then did Red Cloud travel east to meet American officials. At Fort Laramie, he signed a treaty that shocked the world. The U.S. recognized Sioux control of the Powder River country. It was the only war in American history that ended with a native nation victorious, their sovereignty written into law. For a moment, Red Cloud had forced the empire to retreat. The dream of native independence flickered bright once again. But treaties with Washington rarely lasted. Within a decade, gold in the Black Hills broke every promise made at Fort Laramie. Still, Red Cloud's war remained proof that strategy and unity could defeat even the most powerful army. In later years, Red Cloud chose diplomacy over war. He urged his people to survive by learning new ways while holding on to their spirit. Some criticized him for compromise, but none could deny his achievements. He had forced the U.S. to bend, a feat no one else accomplished. He lived to old age, respected even by enemies, known as the most successful native leader in dealing with America. When he died in 1909, he left behind a rare story, a war fought, a treaty won, and a nation recognized, if only for a moment. The lesson of Red Cloud's war endures. True power lies not only in weapons, but in vision, patience, and unity. And though the treaties faded, his scarlet cloud of resistance still lingers over the plains, a reminder that nations can fight and win. The Lakota remember three paths that rose together in one generation: Sitting Bull, Crazy Horse, and Red Cloud. Each different, yet bound by the same spirit of resistance. Sitting Bull was the visionary. His strength lay in prophecy, in the power of spirit, in uniting nations with faith in destiny. Crazy Horse was the warrior. His strength lay in courage, in speed, in a heart that never bent to fear or fame. Red Cloud was the strategist. His strength lay in patience, diplomacy, and knowing when to fight and when to demand peace. Three paths, three leaders. Together they formed a trinity of resistance that shook the American frontier. Sitting Bull gave his people courage through visions, even as soldiers closed in. Crazy Horse gave them victories that became immortal. Red Cloud gave them treaties that proved they could win. Each man carried burdens. Sitting Bull was hunted until his death. Crazy Horse was betrayed by those he trusted. Red Cloud was criticized for compromise. Yet each became legend. Their flaws made them human. Their courage made them eternal. They showed that leadership wears many faces: the shaman, the warrior, the diplomat. They fought not only for land, but for the memory of who they were, for language, for songs, for children yet unborn. Though their victories faded, their spirit endured. No bayonet, no treaty, no bullet could erase them from history. Today, their names echo in monuments, rivers, and mountains. But more importantly, they live in stories told by native voices. Sitting Bull's vision reminds us spirit is stronger than steel. Crazy Horse's charge reminds us courage can defeat fear. Red Cloud's treaty reminds us strategy can bend empires. Their lives tell us that freedom is not one battle, but a lifetime of choices, sacrifices, and faith. The United States thought it defeated them, but even in defeat, they became immortal. For the Lakota, they are not just history. They are ancestors, guiding voices, spirits still walking the land. For the world, they are lessons in courage, unity, and resistance against overwhelming odds. Their legacy is not only about war, it is about survival, about keeping identity alive when everything seemed lost. Sitting Bull, Crazy Horse, Red Cloud, 3 names carved into history, 3 fires that refused to be extinguished. They stood for freedom, dignity, and the unbroken spirit of native nations. Even today, their words and deeds inspire new generations. In every drumbeat, in every powwow, in every prayer, they are present. They remind us that the fight for identity never ends, that remembering is itself an act of resistance. The warrior, the prophet, the strategist. Together, they remain the heartbeat of the plains. Their legacy is this: nations can fall, battles can be lost, but spirit endures forever. The stories of Sitting Bull, Crazy Horse, and Red Cloud are not just tales of the past. They are living echoes, carried in wind, water, and memory. Each man walked a different path: prophecy, battle, diplomacy. Yet all 3 sought the same goal: freedom for their people. Their battles are over, their voices are silent, but their spirit endures, whispering through songs sung at fires and drums beating in powwows. Today, their names are taught in schools, carved in stone, spoken with pride at gatherings. They have become more than men. They have become symbols. Sitting Bull's courage in vision reminds us to trust in spirit. Crazy Horse's fearless charge reminds us that courage can move mountains. Red Cloud's wisdom shows that strategy can win peace. Together, they proved that even against impossible odds, resistance is never in vain. To fight is to exist. To remember is to resist. The United States may have broken treaties, taken lands, and silenced voices, but it could never erase the spirit of the Lakota. That spirit rides still in every powwow dance, every prayer to the Great Spirit, every story whispered from elder to child. The buffalo return to some prairies. The songs return to the air, and with them the memory of leaders who once stood unbroken. They remind us that freedom is fragile, but it is worth every sacrifice. They remind us that leadership takes many forms: the dreamer, the fighter, the negotiator. All are needed for survival. They remind us that the land is sacred, that identity is not for sale, that dignity is not negotiable. And most of all, they remind us that legends never die. They live in the ground, in rivers, in mountains, in us. The United States won wars, but lost something greater: the chance to destroy the spirit of nations older than itself. For every treaty broken, there is a story told. For every battle lost, there is a drum that still beats. Sitting Bull, Crazy Horse, Red Cloud, their names are eternal, not because they sought glory, but because they carried truth. And truth cannot be killed. It cannot be silenced. It cannot be erased. Their story is not only Lakota history, it is human history. It is a reminder that courage belongs to all who resist oppression. The warrior rides, the prophet prays, the diplomat speaks. Together, they carry the eternal heartbeat of the plains. In the rustle of grass, in the cry of eagles, in the thunder of hoofs, they are still here. Their story does not end in defeat. It ends in remembrance, and remembrance is victory. Say their names: Sitting Bull, Crazy Horse, Red Cloud. Let them live again on your tongue. Share their story. Carry it forward. For as long as their names are spoken, their nations endure. And so the story continues, not as history, but as legacy. Sitting Bull, Crazy Horse, Red Cloud, forever the heartbeat of the people.